That's 5:30. Okay. All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 5:30. And we can go around the room and identify who is here. Start with our new member, Matt Hannon.
Matt Hamel, yes, delighted to be here. First meeting. I'm the freshman who will be seen and maybe even heard from.
Good.
Dave Spencer.
Eric Spencer.
Gail Bruin.
Jennifer Kaufman, Director of Planning and Development. Nice to meet you.
Sandy Florian, Administrative Assistant.
Jillian Woodmansee, I'm a planner, and Jennifer Soffield.
And Kevin Deneen from the town attorney's office. Delighted to be-
Thanks for coming. Okay, we will approve the minutes from our last meeting of 11/29/23. If you had a chance to look at those. I do have one correction, but
Okay,
under A, it should be located in Mansfield Center Historic District, not located in Mansfield.
Oh,
That was the only thing I found.
under A. I'm looking at that.
can the minutes go up on the screen? Or do we need our individual?
I don't think I printed
Do we
it.
need
Is
to-
it- is
Just
this
printed.
Maybe then. Oops.
This does say Mansfield Center.
Whereabouts are you saying?
All right, it says Mansfield Center, then I don't know, maybe I looked at an old version or something. Okay, good.
Right, so the good as is.
So can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
I second the motion.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then we'll move to new business and we'll,
There's Kevin.
bring back, oh, yeah. Attorney Kevin Deneen is going to speak with us.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you all, at least remotely tonight. On that, and congratulations to the new members. I was born and grew up in Windsor, which is the first settled English settlement in Connecticut, despite what Wethersfield might think. And so we have a very good historic district here in Windsor too, on the original settlement area and then the original road from between Hartford and Springfield. So the work that all the historic district commissions really do is, in my opinion, very important because it really gives the character to these areas that we're in. But that being said, the historic district commissions are really of the same cloth as the Planning and Zoning Commission, ZBAs, the Wetlands Commission, and then you're a land use body. And you are statutorily empowered to make certain decisions within, with regard to private property in terms of what's appropriate and the certificate of appropriateness. The same way, in a slightly different realm, the zoning commission is going to do its work in those different areas. And the authority and the power to make those decisions is a little bit different because the process for creating, as you're sure well aware, is it's really a self-imposed restriction that a particular number of property owners can vote to create a historic district. And so unlike planning and zoning commissions, which can impose that on it, it really starts with a group of folks that really want to have that level of self-regulation acting through the historic district commission. But similar to what we have on all those other types of land use bodies, in order to protect the due process rights of all the parties involved, there's a statutory process that really has to be followed to do that. And I just want to talk a little bit tonight about that. I've had a couple of cases in the last 5-10 years with regard to appeals from historic district commissions. A lot of them having to do, as we're seeing more and more, with some of the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, compliance issues or accommodation issues. But it's a lot like what I used to tell my kids when they were growing up, nothing's a problem until it's a problem. It's up, because the only cases you see are the ones that go on appeal, on that. But that doesn't mean that you have to, you can sort of give short shrift to the process on that. The whole piece that I really want to talk about is the public hearing process that the statute lays out and how you have to do that. And it references the timelines and things like that. Jennifer and Jillian are very good at keeping track of those things. You have those same that mirror those that are on the Planning and Zoning Commission or sometimes the Wetlands Commissions that are out there. But the whole purpose of that is really to have the information come to the commission as a whole. And that's done through the public hearing process. It doesn't, you can have a pre-application meeting, but that needs to be like all your meetings, subject to the FOI and the notice and the requirements. And that's really to give everybody an opportunity, the neighbors and everybody else, to have that right to participate. And that really goes back to the due process requirements that come into play whenever you're dealing with private property. When you regulate that, there has to be some level of due process under the U.S. and Connecticut Supreme Court proceedings. The information that's presented to you, and it's, I just did this with the ZBA last night, so a lot of this is sort of common sense, but the issues of predetermination, of bias, of, the one area that I was saying to the ZBA last night is you really see it with what's called ex parte communications. The statute says, both for you and ZBA and planning and zoning, that you have to hold a public hearing, and the applicant gets in public to present their proposal and their application to the commission. And other people have a right to participate and support or object or anything else like that. And the importance of not displaying or keeping an open mind and not displaying predilections or predetermination of what is a good or bad project. It's a little bit different with HDCs because of the fact that you're dealing in a relatively narrow set of issues that are on there. It's a conformity with the character of the historic district. But as I said to the ZBA last night, it's difficult because folks who are involved in their town, whether it's the ZBA or the Historic District Commission, you're going to run into your neighbors, you're going to run into your friends, and those are the folks that are going to be having the applications in front of them. And it's important to want to talk about it. It's just human nature. Oh yeah, I'm going to come in with this and I want to change this light post or windows or whatever. It's important that that information be conveyed in the context of the public hearing, because that's, if someone is providing that information not through the public hearing, it really denies their neighbors and everybody else the opportunity to comment on it. And that's the whole underlying idea of this sort of due process that runs throughout all the different boards and commissions that we have, is that all parties ought to have an equal opportunity to hear what's going on and to do that. So to the extent that your friends and neighbors want to talk to you about one of their applications or someone else's application, it really needs to be steered back to the public hearing process that's on that, because that's, if there is an appeal, that's typically the area that we have the most, from the legal point of view, the most challenging things to deal with on that. So I'm sure you've read through, and then those who've been on the commission for a while understand this, but your authority runs to the architectural features and signage that can be seen from a public road or a public way. And we've done a lot of things in other historic districts. Weathersfield I've done some work for, in addition to Windsor, Suffield, where we've worked with homeowners, especially when they have either an ADA or an aging ramp, having ramps. How can you work this in a way that doesn't impact the visual sight lines from the public ways and things like that? So there's a lot of ways of getting at it, but it's really the public viewing, the public way that's right in the statutory definition that's on there. So those are sort of the general thoughts I just wanted to convey. Obviously, as a public agency, you're subject to the same FOI provisions. So when you get together to debate it, if you have a quorum of people, you're really supposed to have that as a notice meeting if you're going to conduct the town's business or conduct the HTC's business. Doesn't mean you can't have social interactions, but if you're going to talk about applications, that really needs to be done also within the context of the NFOI type notice meeting that's on that. So that's what sort of just a high level. It tends to be on the HTCs a much more collaborative effort, but it also is one that, because of that collaborative, it also needs to be done through that public hearing and through the public meeting process, because you don't know necessarily who might object. And if they don't have that opportunity, then it becomes much more easy to attack the decisions that the HTC may hand down on that. So, that's really what I just wanted to sort of say. Very similar to what I talked about with the ZBA last night, and we go through the training every couple of years with all the different boards and commissions. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take my best shot at answering them.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is it normal in other historic districts in Connecticut or other states for them to operate under planning and zoning? It seems to me there's a conflict there.
They don't operate under planning and zoning, but what I was trying to say, they operate in a similar way in the sense that you have the authority to regulate use of private property. So if the planning and zoning can make something a residential zone, they're affecting someone's private property. If someone's in a historic district and they want to do something with their property, they have to come see you to the exterior, things like that. So
Right.
Not that you're under them, but that you have a similar type of authority with regard to to private property.
But in the last year, we have become basically a commission of the planning and zoning. They're doing all the messaging for our meetings. They are taking in the applications. We're not being involved in much of that. So I'm a little concerned about that.
No, it's not. I wouldn't say it's the mechanical parts. That's true of whether it's the wetlands, there's staff agencies that has to come through. And that's very common. I mean, it's.
So there's a difference between, so we're not the Planning and Zoning Commission, where we work for the Planning and Development Department. So we're staff, we have no regulatory authority. We don't make regulatory decisions at all, but we staff. In our department, we staff 10 committees, Planning and Zoning, Inland Wetlands, Zoning Board of Appeals, Affordable Housing, Conservation. I won't name them all because you don't need to know all of that. But so the town manager and the committee on committees said that this HDC has staff support and it's going to come from our department. So that's how you ended up with us.
But I think your idea of staff support and ours is quite different. I mean, initially it was, we need somebody to take our minutes and to send out the notices. It was not getting involved in the actual review of the applications and setting the dates and all of that. That should be, something that we are involved in as a commission.
So the way, I mean, this is, Kevin, you can speak to how this happens in other towns, but the way, for example, it happens with planning and zoning and with all of the other commissions that we staff in our department is that an applicant comes and says, hey, I want to do renovations to the porch on the general store. Okay, so we say, okay, you are in a historic district. You need to come in for a certificate of appropriateness. And we have an application in our office and we say, you have to fill that out. We schedule a meeting. We did have the pandemic. There wasn't a lot of business that came to our office. We have a meeting. You guys receive that application. You schedule a public hearing. We put the notice in the paper that for the date that you schedule that public hearing within the statutory time frame. Then we have a public hearing and you all just after taking public comment, you discuss the merits of the application and render a decision. Is that how it works in other towns, Kevin?
Pretty much, it is, and it's usually the staff that are tracking, the timelines to make sure you're meeting what the statute requires, so they're not automatic approvals in some cases or automatic denials in others. The authority to make the decision is clearly with the HTC, it's not a staff decision, but the mechanics of it is very similar.
But at what point should the commission be involved? Not till after an application has been filled out and given to,
Yeah, I mean, yes,
I mean, that makes it, that's not consistent with how this has worked, because we have an educational component
Sure.
to our, our commission. That's very important. And it's there to help applicants.
It is, but educational is no doubt that that's part of the historic district actions everywhere. But if I'm coming in and meeting with individual commissioners to talk about what my plan's going to be, that's squarely within the ex-parte communication, because you're supposed to be developing that within the public hearing process. So if I'm a neighbor and I want to object to whatever the general store is doing to their front porch, I'm supposed to have the same opportunity to hear the same information in public and render on that. So that's one of the reasons I think a lot of, every town I know has that, a similar setup, in order to insulate to a certain degree any charges of ex parte communications, as communications outside that, or charges of someone charging with predetermination. Well, Commission X met with the applicant 5 times without noticing a public meeting and making, suggestions, and then, the goose was cooked before anybody even had a chance to hold the public hearing. So that process is the one that I'm most familiar with. I've seen just about every place I've ever been, that there's a staff that handles that paper processing. And then when it comes to the commission, they make their decision on the information presented at the public hearing.
Yeah, and we do that, but then you take the risk of winding up with an application that is completely unacceptable. Whereas if you can, and you can publish the meeting or whatever you want, but to have some meetings with the applicant before the final application would be incredibly helpful. And it's certainly the way I think some that historic districts that I know work.
Mhm.
It can be in public. I don't think that matters. The idea is to help the applicant put together the best application he can for.
And those are typically called pre-application meetings, and they'll meet with the commission as a whole, not individually. And they'll come into a publicly noticed meeting and say, we're considering making these renovations to stay on the general store. Is there immediate feedback before we submit it? And then people can look at it and comment on it. But then, again, as a publicly noticed meeting, if I'm interested in that item, I can come in and listen to it or watch it on the meetings and then make my comments when there's an actual application. But, pre-application meetings with the body as a whole in a public meeting is fine. But, if they're coming in and grabbing Matt and saying, here's something I want to, I'm thinking about doing this, what do you think? That's when it starts, you get into that ex parte communication that if someone objects to it later on, we're gonna have a problem with that.
I have one question, which is, we occasionally have walkthroughs of sites. Now, where do those fall in terms of the public? How does that work, and how do we avoid that being a problem?
That's a problem for almost every land use where we have site visits all the time, and those, if there's going to be a quorum of the membership, it is a public meeting. And then we always have this question with the property owner, are they willing to do that? We've had some meetings. I've done a couple of walkthroughs with some of the other land use bodies, and we'll have 20 people stomping around the grounds. It's a little bit of a fine line, but if it's going to be a quorum of folks, then it needs to be noticed as a meeting.
Kevin, I have one question about that because the way we do it with our other boards and commissions is that, so we always notice whenever there's a site walk, planning and zoning has them all the time, as does inland wetlands and ZBA, right? So we note, so you would say, you would receive an application, the way planning and zoning would work, receive the application, schedule a public hearing within the statutory timeframe, schedule a site walk, just like we did with the general store. That was a publicly noticed meeting. At that time, you go and you observe the conditions of the site. No decision, we usually place it on the agenda. No decisions will be made. We've had a lot of development going on in town, and we've had a lot of very controversial applications. So we always say it's very important for everyone to stay together so that everyone can hear the same information. But we always say it's very important that the merits of the application are not discussed. So if I'm doing planning and zoning, they can say, well, could you please show me the location of this building? Not, you need to put your building, you need to design your building this way, or we want architectural shingles. You can ask like clarifying questions. Would that be the same way for historic district commissions, running the field trip in the way we do for planning and zoning?
The site visits are an opportunity to, really see what people are talking about. But it really, the debate of, okay, the balustrade should be different, or we want 8 over 6 windows, or whatever the piece is really for the regular meeting part. It's a information gathering rather than the rest of it. So very similar to that.
But they're publicly noticed so that interested members of the community can come to see that as well, correct?
Yep. And that's, as I said, that's true of all the different land use bodies that are on there.
What do you do when these people from the community or from the historic district that are not involved in the particular application come and ask specific questions? How do you handle that?
At the walkthrough or at a public?
At the walkthrough.
Usually either staff or, the 2 times that I've been on there, we just steer it away, say that's a question for the, public hearing, and that will be coming up, or it's continued till next Thursday, and come talk at that point. But you really don't want to get into that debate at that point.
I mean, I think what we're doing is very different from the town building 8-story public dormitories where there's a lot of controversy. I mean, this is sort of congenial, usual information gathering, sharing sort of get-togethers. It's quite different. That's what really disturbs me about looking at this as though it is, a plan of our land use in the town. It's quite different.
Well, it is and it isn't. Nothing, as I said, nothing's a problem till it's a problem. You go in and someone disagrees, with the decision of the HDC, and they take an appeal. Although it's being done for the right reasons of historic preservation and historic continuity in there, you're regulating private property. And for the most part, people who move into historic districts move in knowing that, and they're wanting to live in those districts. Palisado Avenue here in my town is my favorite street in town. There's probably 40 pre-1750 houses in there. But, you're regulating the use of private property, and it may be congenial, and it may, like everything else, as I said, nothing's a problem until it's a problem. And if someone objects to a decision, whether it's to approve a certificate of appropriateness or reject one, and they take an appeal, you have to be in a position to be able to defend it. And it doesn't mean it has to be adversarial in each of these hearings, but you have to afford everybody the right to support or oppose an application. And the way they do that is to do it all in the public. And that's really the sort of the meat and potatoes.
You know, I think to Gail's point, it's a very important role that the Historic District Commission does, an educational role. And the Planning and Zoning Commission also plays that educational role because zoning regulations and our plan of conservation development are complicated. So the way the Planning and Zoning Commission handles that is with a publicly noticed pre-application meeting, and that's optional, that not everyone, because that sometimes people are in a rush and that takes time. So, and it's also non-binding, right? So it would be a publicly noticed pre-application. And as we work with applicants, we can certainly strongly recommend that. But Kevin, can we require a pre-application?
No, no. Because the statute just talks about you make an application, that's what and whether it's for planning and zoning, wetlands or HDCs, they have a right to just proceed immediately if they want.
So the pre-application would be a separate process. So they would come in and say, and that would be really valuable, I think, but some people may not want to do that or have the time to do that. So
It may be something that's more simple, it's, I'm replacing, this architectural feature with something very similar, but slightly different material or something like that. There's not a lot of heavy lifting going on. There'll be other, applications which are much more complex, and they may want that initial feedback through a pre-application meeting. So,
Yeah,
I
I think
think
most of the
the-
people that come to us late enough in their process that they're already in a hurry. That's generally what happens is they, especially in New England because of our weather, they're usually trying to get everything done before the weather gets bad. And, they're coming to us in midsummer and they don't have any time. So unless it's really complicated, probably a pre-app meeting isn't something that we would do very often.
But I think we're not being notified right now when you hear about somebody who wants to do something. You're waiting until an application comes in, and then we didn't even get the general store for a couple of weeks after you got it. It's supposed to come to the commission, not to planning and zoning, or not to you. And so if we knew right away, XYZ is looking to do Y, we could say, that's gonna be complicated, maybe you ought to offer.
So-
Or
I think we always offer a pre-application meeting when we talk to them. I think with the general store, and Jillian can correct me if I'm wrong, what happened was they came in, we learned, oftentimes they come in for a zoning. They're like, we want to do this work on our property. We're like, okay, you need a zoning permit first. First you have to go to the Historic District Commission to get a certificate of appropriateness. But they come to us because they need a zoning permit. And that's how we find out about it. And we say, okay, you're in the Historic District Commission. You need to come and do a certificate of appropriateness. So I think with the general store, they came in, they wanted to get going because the weather was turning and he needed to get his windows in. So we said, put in an application. And then your meeting was we quickly scheduled a meeting. So I think we did. We're kind of only given, we don't know what everyone is doing within the historic district. We only find out about it when they come to us, or Mike finds out about it when they go to the building department.
Yeah, in that particular case, we found about the only date that we could find that was soon enough
Right, and it was
that was
hard,
legal and that everybody
Right.
could show up to,
right?
because some people weren't even gonna be in states.
It was during the holidays and it was, we wanted to make sure that he didn't run out of time and he could get his windows in before it, so you're working with a lot of different, with all of your schedules, the
Yeah.
applicant schedules, our meeting schedule, so it's a lot of things.
in that case, the windows were not objected to by you, for instance. What if he had come with windows, the application was all done, all the windows were in there, with some, what you would consider not really architecturally qualified for that type of
But I think we had,
What would
we
we do
did
then?
question that because some things were missing from the specs, and I think we were able to do everything we wanted to do within the public hearing.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, we
if they-
clarified some things that weren't clear,
Right, but you
on the
were okay with the
application.
manufacturer, let's say.
right?
But
And the quality of the window. What if they had put in an application with junk windows? And there it comes and we have a public hearing and we've got to sit there and,
you deny it.
You don't.
Yeah,
but that's
Right.
what a pre-meeting could be so useful.
A pre-application in the public
I'm
forum.
not sure if it's in public forum at all, but
But you know, we would
It has to be
encourage that,
within
but they
this.
don't have, like, we can't make the applicant do that. We say, look, we want you to be successful. So we strongly encourage you to learn about the historic district as much as possible, and we strongly recommend a pre-application meeting with the commission. But, you know, if someone's in a rush, we say, well, then you know, take your chances. It's the same thing with planning and zoning. It's great if you could come get feedback, but you know, you might get denied. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. If they're in a rush, they're taking the chance, right, Kevin?
well, I think the legal notification time gives us, for instance, with the windows, I mean, I get the information soon enough that, I mean, I did the research on Lincoln Windows
right.
because I had enough time to do that because they need 2 weeks notice anyway, so we have the application usually in enough time to do research and find out whether there's an issue that we want to bring up. So I think the legal requirements help us there, that there's a certain amount of time between the application and the meeting that we have.
Yeah, but if our
of the
real
information
objective
available.
is to help preserve the character of the building and the district, I think we want to make sure that the owner is on the right track.
Right,
And to just get an application that is awful and have to deny it isn't helping anybody, in my view.
right.
But then we can
We can
tell
deny
them
it.
why in that meeting, why it's not appropriate, and then they can come back with resubmitting a revision to their application, right?
And when we go down to your next, another item on your agenda, I think, is adopt, discussion of development of design guidelines. So, you know, when you follow the state statute, which is pretty broad, right? I mean, there's no information, we have information on your website about the Mansfield Center, you know, the different historic districts, but we don't have guidelines that your roof should be this way or your cornice should be that way. These historic district guidelines would be something like an applicant for the zoning says they have to meet these things and you're checking the box. But you've developed them, you approve them, you're providing educational information to the applicant in that manner. And that's what a lot of towns do, because it's not arbitrary, right? Then if you meet these guidelines, and you come in, probably you're gonna get approved, right?
Right, and that's what
Well,
we
we're not
haven't done, but I think, as Gail would probably say, that's been intentional because aesthetics is so complicated that you can't cover it that way. And if you put down specific guidelines, people can think that they're adhering to what you want, and they aren't. So I think it actually works out and always has, as far as I know. I don't think we've ever had any complaints that we do combine that educational process in the public hearing. And usually we've been able to change in the public hearing whatever needed to be changed. And that's what we've approved
Usually they've been a change before we get to the public hearing. And then it's just a
in the,
quick. And nobody objects. Well, we've never had anybody object at a
no,
public
we've only
hearing.
had people come to support their neighbors, actually.
Yeah. But the
Again,
idea,
because it's a historic district, everybody chooses to live in an old house.
the larger historic districts, Weathersfield, Cromwell, lots of them have little booklets, but they're really basically just taking the state statutes and putting them into the local context. And we could do that, and I think it's a good idea if we do that, but I think we can basically take one of those that we consider a good you know, a good guidebook and do that for us, but it's not going to have specific design. You know, just as you were saying, there's so many different designs in all of our eclectic districts.
And it can be very misleading because you will approve something for one house that you wouldn't approve for another, and that all has to be explained.
You know, and a
it's hard
house
to
built
write it
in
down.
1745 has been changed in 1810 and 1865 and 1950. I mean, it's just a hodgepodge.
I guess
so
what I'm
it's-
saying is I think it's worked pretty well so far. The way we've been doing it has, I don't think we've had a lot of complaints or issues with anybody.
No, I don't think so either.
I think there was just an issue with, I think, because we're used to, our staff, we staff all these different committees, and we're very aware of the public process and ex parte communication, because, you know, we have gone to court before, and we don't want to, our job is to make sure that we keep the town out of court and we follow procedure.
Yeah,
You know, your job is to make the decision as to whether or not it's appropriate within the historic district. So I think what I'm hearing is that if you guys agree that moving forward, when an applicant comes in and says, I want to replace my porch or whatever, in the, you know, things that are defined by your statute, we say we strongly recommend that you have a pre-application with the commission, with the commission. But if you're in a rush, you can take your chances and come in. And if there was some research, because I think people want to know. So I know, like, we've gone to Rudy Favretti's books, for example, where they have pictures of the general store. And we say, you know, you may want to look at this because this is what we know, and we know Rudy Favretti's work. So if we had resources as staff to give to them, because
But that's not your job. That is not your job.
I think Kevin would probably disagree.
This is,
Our bylaws say that we have an office and that's it. It doesn't give us.
the commission's job is to adjudicate. You approve or disapprove, you don't design. And I know that there's a flow between those. But it's really the applicant's responsibility to do that, because under the statute, the HDC, you adjudicate, you rule, you approve or disapprove on that. And it's up to the applicant in any type of application, whether it's with this commission or others, to put that application together. And that feedback and discussion back and forth needs to happen in a publicly noticed meeting. And that's the point of it, is that, you know, you're sitting not as a design team, but as you adjudicate, you rule on the application. You take a vote on it and you issue the certificate of appropriateness, or you don't. And that's the statutory role that's there. So.
but in the past, we have actually, during the public hearing, we have, with the agreement of the applicant, changed portions of the application. Now, that's okay, correct?
Absolutely. You're in a public meeting, you're in a public hearing, you're going back and forth, and that exchange happens all the time.
Okay.
You may have an architect or an engineer providing information and saying, well, this seems to me better this way. If they can work it out there and it's in a public meeting, and someone else wants to object to it later on or support it later on, they have the right to do that, but they've heard it.
Thanks for being with us tonight. So the statute, as I read it, doesn't provide for this pre-application process. There's no statutory construct. There's nothing in our bylaws that talks about it. Does it need structure?
Not really. I mean, there's not a provision for that in any of the land use bodies. because the statutes really talk about timelines and process after an application has been submitted on that, after it's received, how many days you have, when you notice the public hearing, when your publications have to be on and all that. So the pre-application meetings are really just a public forum that you would have in any meeting that you do. So you can make it more formal if you want, but there's no requirement for that.
So I guess the advantage I see to doing it the way we've been doing it without the pre-application is speed, and the fact that we actually get a proposal that we can research instead of going in with no information. So
I totally see your
That's
point.
worked out well for me anyway, because I get all this information about what windows they plan to use, and if I don't know anything about them, I can do the research before we meet.
But do you do that after the application? So like the application, like the applicant comes in on today, right? Or it comes in, say next Monday, right? You have your next meeting is whatever the state is. So we say, okay, well, you're gonna come in, your application is gonna be received by the commission on February 10th. And you would have that full application with the windows and the product, the materials that they're using for the porch and the design of the porch. You're receiving that. You're not talking about it when it's being received. You're scheduling the public hearing, and then the applicant and his team, or just the applicant, comes in and says, this is what I'm doing. These are the materials. And you say, well, it would be more appropriate in this area to put in wood windows as opposed to vinyl windows. So then you say, as a condition of approval, move to approve this, provided that the applicant puts in vinyl windows. I mean, wood windows, you know what I'm saying? That's would be a condition of approval. And if you recall back to the Mansfield General Store, there were a number of different conditions, and we do that all the time. And if you need more information, you can actually continue that public hearing, but then it's all in the public forum, and you have the time to do the research.
So I think that's worked out well, and I don't think we've ever had an issue, but if we did, then I guess we would just have to deny it and say you'll have to come back with a different application.
Or continue it.
Okay.
You can, that happens all the time. You continue that public hearing to provide, so they don't, make them go through that. Again, we want to be supportive to
So-
these
So when you
applicants.
continue it, then you have to give public notice that the
Yeah, well,
continuation
it's-
is 2 weeks.
So you have to continue it to a time and date certain. So in your minutes, it says continue to February 10th at 6 p.m. At the commission's special meeting or regular meeting, whatever it is.
But can that be quick, or does that have to, again,
You
does
can
that have?
continue it till, as long as we have time to post the minutes. So, within a few days, you absolutely could continue it.
Okay, so there's not
Yeah.
there's not a public notice problem again.
No, because you've noticed it already, and then you've done in the public forum, you said you've continued to a
Okay.
time and date certain. That's
So
what,
if it's complicated, we could do that so that they
Yeah.
got back to us with
100%.
everything in writing, and we don't have to quickly do it during
On the
midst
fly.
of a meeting.
Right.
Okay, I didn't know about that, the
Yep.
continuation.
yep,
In the past, though, maybe not recently, we have had people who really have very little or no knowledge of how to go about, for instance, replacing windows.
Mhm.
And we've been able to say, okay, here are some appropriate vendors who manufacture windows that are compatible with historic properties and the specific type of house, whether it's 18th or 19th or whatever. I mean, that I think has been useful to people. So how do we?
I
how do we
think
get
it
around
is
that?
really useful. That's.
Well, we can do that in the public meeting. That's the good thing, is that we can
But
do
that's,
that.
the application's already in and they don't know what to put in for the windows. You
But the
say put an
advantage I see to
application in.
that is that we get, even if it's their ignorance, we get that on paper,
just
so
get
we
on
know what
paper.
we have to do. We're prepared for the meeting.
We want windows. We need windows. And then
Right,
there's nothing in the application. The application says you have to detail and show
Right.
examples, so.
Yeah, and that's where staff would come in. We say, you need to show all staff does is we say, you need to put your best foot forward and do your research and put forth an argument. And we work with planning, that's all staff does, we're not saying it's gonna work. With zoning, we have a 300-page book that tells people the things that they need to do. With here, we just have a paragraph statute, which is fine, but we have to, I think we have to balance doing the public's business in a public forum but giving and educating. So that's where, pre-application is best, right?
I think so, because the information should be coming from us, not from you.
Oh,
Giving them Rudy Favretti's book is not
I know,
necessarily
we
a
don't,
good thing, but
right, but
coming
so,
from us, we can give them the correct resources.
so,
That is why
and
I think.
that's why I think we always recommend a pre-application anyways, but I think we can strongly recommend that. But as we were just talking about, if someone's in a rush, they're submitting an application, the statutory clock begins, and it's ultimately their choice as to if they want to go to that advisory route first, or they want to go through that official application process.
I think that probably largely depends on where they are when they come to you. If they're already talking to a builder and they've already done a lot of preliminary work, whether it's good or bad,
Mhm.
then they're in one position. If they just come into you and say, we're thinking about doing something and we haven't, you're the first person we've talked to, that's a very different situation.
Yeah, that's when we would be like, you need to come to the Historic District Commission. When we have someone up that says our windows are leaking, we are like, we can't pay the heating bill because we're saying, well, what's your time frame? We want to do it today. No, you have to wait. You have to come to the Historic District Commission. And then you have to go to zoning, and then you have to go to building, but we're trying to balance that. So one thought I have is that, your educational role is really essential, but perhaps it's doing a mailer once a year saying, hey, you own, you're stewards of these historic properties. There aren't that many properties in the different historic districts. If you're doing work, given the statute, please plan ahead and allow some time to come in and speak with our Historic District Commission.
Yeah, that's good. And that in my mind is a staff function.
And we did
So
send out,
what you're doing, I don't think it's staff functions, but that one.
But I don't know what we've done that hasn't been,
Well,
like,
I didn't.
Can we let Attorney Deneen go?
yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah,
are we
thanks.
done with
Yeah.
that portion?
yeah,
Is there
Yeah,
any other
okay.
questions or anything for him?
Well, if there are bylaws questions, is that your issue as well or not?
I don't know.
So
So
these bylaws are just presented as a draft. If there are questions and the commission agrees, staff could work with Attorney Deneen in our regular business to get your questions answered, or you can do it now. Your choice.
Well, my question is, where did these come from? We didn't have original bylaws? And you just put these,
We
Together or-
found draft bylaws in Linda Painter's files from 2019. And then we have been working with all of our boards and commissions to make sure the headings are correct. But, and much of it is kind of boilerplate, like, membership that's coming from your charge,
Okay.
alternate members. Disqualification is, that's boilerplate, code of ethics. Officer comes from your charge, officers, elections,
Yeah.
meeting
had,
schedules.
One minor and one question. So on the final section, Article 8,
Yeah,
point 1, it talks about a biennial review, but then the subject, the substance of it is annual.
oh,
Which is it?
if that's would be up to you.
Yeah.
Well, what are you?
You can
what are
decide.
What are you doing?
These are
with others?
drafts. This
These
is
are
not for
drafts.
staff
Do
to
with
say.
other
This is
commissions.
a draft.
Are they annual?
The other commissions do biennial.
I don't think it's necessary
no,
personally.
our
Do a
commission
biennial?
is,
We barely meet
Little-
biennially.
right,
Well, I think review is, you can just say, because by
Every 2 years is.
every 2 years, you can look at them and you can say, good,
So
you
we
don't
would
have to
also
give a
approve
deep
them.
dive.
Right,
Right.
okay.
We would
Okay.
review and approve, yeah. In Article 1.1.3, the objective, the purpose, second bullet, it seems a little narrow that we're simply looking at it compatibility with adjacent structures and scale, mass and materials. I don't think that's quite the scope of our authority.
Well, it's part of it. It's
but
not just adjacent,
Right.
it's the actual structure itself. whether
Exactly.
It's compatible
It's
with.
part,
what's
but
there.
it is not, so I don't know how much.
So there are some things we need to change on that, but since that's only
That
a draft, that doesn't matter,
I
we could
think
have,
this should come right out of the general statute.
we could do that.
There is yeah, I think
Do you
there's
have the
language
statute
that,
here?
that
Yeah.
would get at the missing part of what the
Mhm.
commission does that could be added into that.
So you could even just delete, you could just say the powers and duties of the Historic District Commission. Mansfield, Connecticut are those set forth in 7-147
Yeah,
A through K.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
that's simple.
That's it,
they
I
actually,
just think that's.
refer right to
yeah.
the
very
statute.
clean, yeah.
Yep.
So my issue was, let's look at 2.6, resignation of membership. Resignations, and this I think goes for new members as well. Written form and transmitted to the town clerk and the chair. I haven't been getting information on anything. I did not, I spoke with Matt and encouraged him to apply. I never got the letter. I had to ask for it and you got it for me, thank you. But there is a lack of communication between the town office here and our commission. As soon as you have somebody interested in filing an application, it seems like we ought to be notified.
Filing an application for membership.
No,
No,
for
for one
review,
maybe.
for historic, so that we know what's going on in the districts.
So, okay, so I think the resignation of membership, that happens for the clerk, and we just need to make sure that we're coordinating with them better. That it's they have some new staff, they're using a new software. But we can definitely talk with, I know, right? New software, right?
That's helpful.
So we can talk, and Monica is the one who is in charge of tracking that.
Yeah.
So we can make
Alright.
sure that we do that. In terms of applications, as soon as we get an application, how does that usually happen? We put it right on the agenda and it's not, we don't.
Okay, and I know this is going to change. I haven't been informed of items for an agenda or that we are going to have a meeting or not going to have a meeting for over a year. I just get a notice the meeting's canceled.
So but you and I have worked out a
We're going
schedule
to
where
do
we're
that.
going to meet
Yeah.
the week
Yeah.
ahead of time, just like we did for this. So maybe the other commission members can just be aware that the chair and staff will be scheduling meetings a week before your regular meeting so that we can talk and set the agenda. And that if your meeting's going to be canceled, it will be determined at that time. So I think that we've addressed
Right,
that issue.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing a few growing pains. I'm a new director. I've not staffed this particular commission. I staffed many others, but, and we haven't had applications and that's why. So forgive us, please, for,
We'll work through it.
yep.
So I want to go back to the education, communication newsletter. So we have the authority as the commission, or does it come from the town to communicate directly with property owners in the 3 districts? Is it,
Who's,
could the commission communicate or would it come from the town,
that would come from, you would develop the communication
right?
and we would just mail it out.
Yeah, I have one here from 2009 that we sent out,
Yeah, like we would just, you write.
and that's
Oh,
probably the last one we sent out.
Wow, that's older.
Historical notes, sometime in the early 1970s, one of the first ones. It was a periodic newsletter. So because I live in a historic district, I didn't say that at the beginning, and I can tell you, there is a lot of confusion about what needs to go to the commission. And when.
Mhm.
Some people think only if a permit is required.
Mhm.
Some people don't go to the commission.
Well, some people
Right.
get a permit.
Some
Some people
get
don't get a
permits.
permit, don't go to the commission.
Right, yeah,
They just do things.
yeah. Mhm.
So I think there's the need to communicate with property owners is enormous.
So we could draft a letter
We could draft.
and we'd have an annual letter that just goes out on a specific date and we might not even have to change it from year to year. If it's just
Yeah, we
although
have,
this letter included the members and that would have to change periodically, but other than that, the rest of the letter is just,
You guys can draft a letter and we'll mail it out. And we have an easy way to just click on all of the, through our GIS
Mhm.
system. Check
Mhm.
on, click on
yeah,
all
that would be
the,
great.
Waters.
Can the commission describe recent actions? Or does that get in the way of any notice?
what do you, like the decisions?
Like if, for example, I'm sure there's a very different level of knowledge of what's going on with the store.
Sure,
We
yeah.
talked about a lot tonight. A lot of people don't have any idea what's going on. And so could we say the commission approved?
Yeah. 100%. That would be a
a
great thing.
renovation of the first floor, so a new, business tenant and 2 apartments, or I think that's what it is. So, because, we've got nosy neighbors, right? But they don't know how to get the information.
well, everybody's nosy about the general store.
I
Of
know.
course.
Yeah, it's a very public place.
Yeah,
And people have high hopes for it,
Yeah,
so. So.
and he's got goodwill
yeah,
from the community.
it does. People, that's really
So-
fair.
Is that something you would put on a website?
We can,
Only because if you're only sending it to people in the historic district, that assumes that everybody else in town doesn't care.
I would think you could do, there's
Homepage.
and there's a homepage and every other month, the town manager does, or the town does a newsletter.
Right.
And so, for example, Affordable Housing has done an article, Agriculture Committee has done an article, and an article about the general store would be great.
So
And
if
they
you go
would
down,
love,
it shows you, I don't go on the website.
yeah,
Mansfield.
yep, yep.
So if I were to go down and say, I want a historic commission, is there a link directly that could have information?
Yep,
And a
so,
link that we wouldn't have to send letters, but also
Well,
inform
If I wanna. Kevin,
more
I
than
can
just
pull it
people
up
in the
internet
district who
up
might
to
be
the-
interested in town.
to the
sure,
screen.
yeah.
But the letter would be better for the people
Yeah,
in the
we
district.
still would
Yes.
want it.
Instead I have to go anywhere.
But it's
So wait,
quite
I
like-
think, let,
Can we let
see what's going
yeah,
on.
if we have, Kevin probably, do we have any
Good,
legal
okay, thank
questions?
you.
Please,
All right,
thank you
goodbye.
very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
More information than you want.
Keeps backing up slowly.
That's, no, this is exactly the stuff, like, so the planning, I'm gonna go back, because I staff planning and zoning, and it's another land use board, but
Yeah.
they have an educational function. For example, they had a work session on multifamily housing that was outside of an application process, right? So that is something you absolutely could do. You could bring in speakers and we could help you notice them. We have a communications coordinator. She can help get the word out about the general store by posting on Facebook, which would be a great thing for people to know what's happening, right? Then the letter specifically to your, to the
There it
people
is.
who need to come in for a certificate of appropriateness, that's sort of like your, hey, let us help you.
So the town posts on Facebook?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm not on Facebook, so I.
yeah, I try to stay off, but we have a communications person. So if you want to get the word out and the newsletter,
Look.
Be on it.
What's
Yeah,
scary
I
is
got
all the
other things
voting
to do.
stuff is on Facebook and it's not in any public forum like the newspaper anymore.
I know,
That's
it's
scary.
that, yep, yeah, there aren't any good public.
Ignorance is bliss sometimes. though.
Yeah. So,
I'm not so sure about that.
I mean,
It
you
is.
can,
I find out every time there's. an
So if an
election.
applicant comes, do you send them to this is there information here that would be helpful to them when they come? Is that on the application?
This is
Yeah,
the.
this is
yes.
separate from where your oh no, your application is right there as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's your
there's a couple
application
different
link.
ways to
So
do
our
it.
letter could include.
How to apply.
This,
link,
also it could
Yeah.
include this
You
site.
could
so
Could
they-
have
this
a
link. See this
QR
link,
code
Fred?
that people could just
Just
scan and it
scan.
would take them right to your, directly to your website. If we
Yeah.
did it like in postcard form, your communication, we could add photographs and a QR code as,
Mhm.
and then have your information on the back. We,
And that's not prohibitively expensive.
I'm,
I mean, we're talking, how many structures we're talking about?
100 maybe?
150?
Yeah,
No.
it's not that big.
Yeah, I think
But,
it's
mean,
not money. We can have money
Thinking
for that.
about the average age of the homeowners in our districts, do you
Just
think
send
the
them a-
QR code is the?
yeah, that's a good.
Well, whatever is
Yeah,
best to.
but-
to
But also
communicate with
just,
them.
But
we
that-
can also just tell them it's on the town website.
Yeah.
Right,
They
they could go.
probably
yeah.
most people can get to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Even I can do that.
okay,
And
You
we
could
can
either
tell
put it here
them,
and you can put it on the homepage.
we can
no?
tell them about the process that a pre-application is strongly
yeah,
encouraged.
that would be good.
Having done the restoration and come before the commission in the last decade, the process was very opaque. And this information, it is please don't take offense, it's the bare minimum. It doesn't, it tells you how to fill out the form, but the form, it doesn't put the form in the context of the process in a way that I found helpful.
So that's another, if you, as a fairly recent applicant, helping us to,
The reason I figured out how to do it was because I asked my architect to do it.
yeah,
Otherwise, I mean, I've looked at it.
But you didn't initially
this-
just go to the town staff and say, what do I do?
No. I didn't even know to do that. I didn't know that was an option.
Or you didn't know that the historic district even operated through the town?
Roughly speaking, but I didn't know who to approach.
Oh,
So I emailed Gail.
Mhm.
so that's the information that staff is supposed to be doing, is helping an applicant say, here's where the application is, not what you should be doing in terms of your structure, but
Right.
this is the
Here's
process.
the process.
Yeah.
see, that shows you, I wouldn't have even thought, see, that's good that you said that, because I wouldn't have thought that anyone would do that. I would have thought that people would do what I do, which is I just go to the town hall and say, what the hell do I do?
Right,
Find a
that's-
person,
That's what we get,
Yeah.
that's what we do every day.
but I wouldn't have realized
Yeah.
that maybe some people wouldn't do that. And they need some other access.
Mhm.
So that's
It's-
good.
In my experience, you need to guide people from start to finish. And that's where you get consistent outcomes. Where you get people who follow the process because they understand the process.
Right,
If you don't understand the process, it's harder to get consistent outcomes.
Once you make the initial contact with the town staff, the process will be laid out to you, so. The town staff can
And it can
inform
be,
you.
and to a certain extent, it can be laid out on the site. So they have an understanding of the process before they come to you and knock on your door. And they can just kind of, then you're doing a little bit more assurance rather than education, right? You're just confirming that.
but
yeah,
we don't want to be the ones educating, we want to be
Right.
the ones who say, give them, the process. Could I see that letter that was sent out in 2009? Because maybe in the letter to all of the residents,
That's what
thing
it was.
it's like, this
It's-
is the process.
I would not write that letter again, but I would probably put different things in it, especially since we've just been talking, but we did send that out.
So what input does the various committees have in terms of the website? So if we come to you and say, hey, we'd like this, this, and this, do you have an in-house person that's doing the website or
We
is
do
that
it,
outsourced?
Us.
we
You
do it.
guys, so you're designing and doing all that?
I've updated this a little bit,
Okay,
just recently. Well, it's been a little while
Okay.
now, but because it was very plain before, it had
Okay.
no pictures, so I went down and added pictures from each district,
okay,
Oh,
just to give some life to your
yeah,
homepage.
no,
good
This is
Job.
Eric's vocation
Yeah.
too, so he might
Oh,
have
that'd be
some
great.
thoughts
We
here.
Yeah.
love that.
We love
Trust
that.
us.
That's fine, you're
But
more
we're
than
not
welcome for
wedding
your.
designers.
setting for the different district too. You could have separate with
Yeah.
photographs and the
Yeah.
map and.
Right,
So we,
that would be helpful, because I can't even figure out the boundaries of Spring Hill, for instance.
We have a map.
They have a map, it's
Yeah.
I know,
hyperlinked.
we have a map, but it's,
It-
and then I was trying to specifically understand it, and if you go to the, I
Where's
guess the
the map?
bylaws or something
Did we hit
sends
from
you
Spring
to a
Hill?
Mansfield site.
This is.
Okay,
it talks
so this
about-
is where, for me, where it says, where was that, Mansfield Center?
Spring Hill.
Spring Hill,
Spring Hill.
under that click, it would help to have, there's a map here, there's this here, as opposed to just Spring Hill. I would just say, oh, that photograph's taken from Spring Hill. I might not show, there's a whole layer of information under that. So if you said a map of the district,
So-
boom, boom.
And
You
the
could make it a
actual-
button.
So instead of just saying
the
Spring Hill, you want what?
addresses.
What is,
So-
what's behind that that would be helpful? So if I'm going through that quickly, I say, oh, there's a map, great, boom, I'll click Spring Hill on. Right now, I might not click that on because it's just, to me, identifying where that photograph is. Not that there's anything necessarily
So I,
that's more valuable for me.
So
to-
instead, what I could do, we could put buttons here that sit there and say map,
Yeah,
kind of like what?
Like-
That bottom,
It's a
something
map-
like this,
It's a map and description, right?
right?
yeah,
You could put like it's a map and you can put,
yeah,
Uh,
across Spring Hill. So one district might have more buttons than another district.
I wonder
Right.
if maybe, if, it sounds like you're a website person,
No, but my background is art
He's
director,
designing.
graphic designer.
because
Okay.
maybe you could, maybe this commission could just take some time to tell us
So what's-
exactly what you would like on the website. You know, we do this all the time, and so this definitely needs help. Um, but, whatever you want to put on there so that makes it easy for people to understand what to do.
Happy to help.
Yeah, we've been very
So-
negligent.
And that is just,
I'm
you know, we
happy
can, all you do is print off the,
Is that your background too?
in communications.
Yeah.
that would be
okay,
great.
good.
We'd
So
love that.
I'm happy to take a first draft of a first communication and share it with everybody around the table.
Right.
so we could do like buttons, like this page has buttons. And it would take you to what you need. So like. Under
Yeah, the
Spring Hill, we
buttons would
could do
be-
buttons. We could do. so we could-
Proximity to the buttons would be with Spring Hill, is what I'm saying, right?
The challenge is
Yeah.
that there's, it's one document, so you have to split it up. There's the map. And then on page 2 is the history of Spring Hill and the
Right.
properties. and
We can do that.
But
Does
we
it
can
have all
split
the
it up in-
addresses?
We, if you go to, can you go to GIS, because I think probably a better one to link would be to go to, if you go to planning or accessory there.
One thing that occurs to me is on the maps,
Access GIS.
I lived in a
Yeah, it was
historic
top
district
somewhere
in
in the
Andover,
Yep,
and I got a map from, I think it was the 1870s. They
Oh,
did the whole
let me-
state. And they did maps that were at a scale where every individual building was shown. And that was really helpful. If you could even have dots, you say you have access to all the addresses within each.
And
Yeah,
then
look at that.
There you go.
Look at that.
Mhm.
Well, that kind of thing. So even if it's just a dot that shows the houses, people would be able to locate their houses on the map and see for sure whether their house is in there.
I don't know.
With the address.
Yeah,
Not
even
just the
without
dot.
the address.
No, the addresses are important.
Yeah,
But
I
we can
think
send, the letter should go to all the addresses.
Right.
what we can do is, do you see, this is sort of a live map.
Right, and but if those were marked on the map, it might be
Ah, okay.
helpful. The visual is always better
See,
than.
this is not good.
Well, that's not, with the, all
Oh,
the,
this is just.
Yeah.
yeah, I got it. I got
We zoomed it.
lot numbers.
Who knew there were that many people?
Much better.
Zoom in on my house.
And you live,
Yeah, but see, now I was trying to determine if one house on 195 in Spring Hill is or is not in the district. I can't see addresses.
so
can't-
that's when you go, you start clicking around and you go,
You get anyone to do a
But
page.
these, each map has a list of the specific addresses within the district.
But something, a map more like
But
that one that has the
interactive.
houses
Yeah,
on it. would
Without
be
going
really
down the
useful.
road
Just
and
Google
knowing which,
kind of thing, so you can just
which
do that and
address is
clean it
where,
up.
I couldn't.
You can always clean that up pretty easily in Photoshop or something.
But it won't
So-
necessarily have the historic district on it unless we put it on.
Yeah, you do that in your software.
So we'd have to prepare that.
well, we can
someone
help,
would.
we have,
Yeah.
if you tell us what you need to have done, we have folks that we may you can at least ask the question if someone can do it, but it's nice to have it live because this is updated every
Yeah.
week with
Yeah,
the
that
property
is-
owners.
Yeah.
And that way, you know, because you're looking at, if you know the address, if you want to go to, you know, what's the address of the general store, 534.
So that's updated every week by checking the records of
It's all-
transactions and all?
It's all linked with the assessor's office. They download it to this software. So there you go. So
There's the
you
general
type
store.
in, like, if you knew it was
Exact road.
10 Storage Road, whatever, you type that
Mhm.
in
Yeah,
and then you put that layer on, you would see that it's in
Right.
the historic district.
So it
yeah,
seems
I
to
was
me that,
going backwards. I was trying to see, there's a house
Oh.
I'm curious about. Is it in the historic
So
district? I don't have the
where's the
address.
photograph from the left coming
Oh,
from?
well, then
And then-
we can
What's,
actually
whereabouts
easily,
is it on is it on Stores
It's
Road?
on Stores Road. in
Yeah, so if I
Springfield.
click that
I-
blue
I
button,
think
the
the
photograph
district
on the
ends
left
before
shows
the
up?
house.
Is that how that works?
I'm
Say that
sorry.
again, I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
If the blue button or the blue dot on
Mhm.
the general store, if I click that blue,
That gives you the property card.
you have
what
to,
brings up the photograph? Right there. So who's
Yeah.
taking the pictures of all these houses? Where-
assessors.
The assessors.
This is all based on our assessors.
So every house in the
Evaluation.
historic
Mhm.
district, you guys
Yeah.
have a
Every-
photograph.
Every
What-
house.
every
in the
house in
town,
Mansfield.
Every property in the
Oh, I
town.
better clean up my house.
Kind of scary. Yeah.
Big brother.
So we have access to imagery already that you're supplied.
They're
by.
not great because they're not,
Well, it doesn't
They're
have to
older.
be great just to,
They're
so we
different.
know what we're referring to.
yeah,
but they probably are taken with the intention of using them. You know, the assessor
Person.
wants to know what
He's
the
looking at.
building
How
is
to-
all
how-
about.
how to,
Right.
So
how to
they do
assess
take
the
a
property.
Yeah, so
facade.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
resources there that we could take advantage of.
That's where you can find the deed, the survey,
Because then you pick on
like
the vision
some
property card,
permits, not all of them.
and that gives you all the information.
So I'll bet a lot of people who are applying don't know that they can access all this, and that's something we should include in the letter, that you can find out a lot about,
Your district.
yeah, your property initially by going on here.
Well,
We
it's
could
not going to
educate.
give, it's not going to give you the history. That's
Mm-mm.
what.
No.
This
we
is
want
just
them to
like
know.
survey and
This is,
this is assessor's
Actually, a
information.
land, this is you gotta go
I'm
to the
not-
land records to get your.
yeah,
history
I'm
of
not
that
sure this
property.
is of interest. I mean, most
Basically.
people today, I think, know how to do this, right?
Do a title search and, you know.
No.
I don't know.
to get-
Usually,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the best thing to do is, because there's a lot of nuance to this, is that to tell them to contact the planning staff and we will help them get their deeds. You know, and you know, I think telling them about how, because they're in the historic district, they need to get a certificate appropriate, pull the statute prior to getting a zoning or building permit, and then, you know, work with staff on completing the application, save time, because we would like to be able to give you information, so we encourage a pre-application meeting, and this is how long it generally takes, and doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, do recognize that we have jurisdiction over things that aren't permitted. So they don't have to go through that process
Right.
necessarily and do have to go through us,
Right.
so.
So, and if the problem is that's why this letter is important, because we don't permit, for example, HVACs, right? We don't permit roofs, we don't permit windows in the planning department. Building does, so it's an educational, Mike and I have been talking about making.
And that
sure
was an
Yeah.
issue that's probably been corrected.
We're,
Well, not
yes,
completely, because I talked to Matt, I talked to Mike after Matt and I had a conversation about the HVAC
right,
installation across the road from you, and he said, oh, I've been told they don't need to come before the historic district.
we've talked about it.
So-
Because, I mean, it's how you, that would be an architect, that would be I forget, we read the statute and we're like, yeah, that, if you can see it from the road.
Right.
And you have that mini split thing or whatever, that would be,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I sent him the statute, so he
Yeah.
knows that now, but.
Right.
And.
I didn't even see
same-
that.
Same for
Where's that?
solar, right?
And the
so,
same with
Solar has to be, we have to get an application
Right.
for it, but we're strongly encouraged by
Yeah.
statute and to
Yeah.
approve unless it's god awful.
We've approved all of those.
Yeah.
So far.
No,
But-
we haven't. No,
We haven't?
No,
Did we reject a solar?
no, we
No.
haven't seen them all.
No, they get
Oh,
done.
okay.
That's
Come
my
before
point.
us.
But all the
in
ones that have come before us,
Mansfield
we-
Hollow and on
They're
Center
getting done
Street,
without-
yeah.
An application.
but they have permits as well, so.
Yes, they do.
Again, that's,
Building permits, right?
right,
Yes.
So it's a matter of, I think when you told me that a lot of this stopped when Teresa left,
that it did.
I was like, okay, this
Yeah.
is, so we're correcting that.
This
Yeah,
is the gap.
yeah, and
Yeah, Teresa was a nitpicker.
Teresa
and
has
they-
been here for like 25, I don't know, many
Right.
years, yeah.
So. That institutional knowledge is so hard to replace.
It really is.
I remember my father was a professor and I remember there was at one of the schools he was teaching at. Either the president was very ill or they had an interim when there wasn't a president. I remember my dad saying, oh, it doesn't matter, the executive secretary's been there for 30 years and she doesn't need a president.
Yeah. So I know we've had a little bit of a rocky road. All we want to do is make sure that we're following the procedure. Definitely, we need better information on the website. I think you guys now understand the predicament we're in when there's a meeting, when communications happen outside of the meeting, that's just been ingrained in us that you can't do that. So pre-applications will be strongly encouraged.
Good.
Especially, and we're gonna work together to get some mailings out.
Mhm.
And we should do that really quickly because spring's coming. Like, I'm sure people are starting to plan now. This letter, I mean, what we could do,
Is there anything in that letter you would keep?
because we could just draft it and send it.
I would probably redo the whole
Matt, were you
thing
gonna get
from
involved?
what
in
I
that?
saw.
Yeah,
I'm happy to take a draft.
Yeah,
And
let's let
share it
him
with
do
you
that.
all.
You-
You're reviewing rather than creating.
Yeah,
Might take you a little time.
please, yeah.
I'm involved.
No, we want you guys to create that letter and we will send it out.
So I think
So if
the
somebody comes to you and
main thing
says
to
you
say
recommend a
is
pre-application,
probably to
is that
to
just verbal? Or do you
contact
have a
the
thing
planning
in
staff
hand then that
as
says this
soon
is why
as
pre-application might be
contemplating,
valuable to you for the historic commission.
a change
Because
in
we
your
do.
structure that can be
We
seen from the
could,
road.
We
Can I
could definitely
temporarily
hand them
take this?
something,
Yeah.
but we generally say,
thank you.
they say, oh, we,
So I have a question about this pre-application procedure. Is this something that's going to happen when we physically receive, when the commission physically receive, how we have to have a meeting, we have to, what we call receive the application and set the public hearing date? Is that when this pre-application, so
No,
we're
it's
talking
before.
about 3 separate meetings
Yeah,
in order to get an application through, so
right,
a minimum of 3 months.
Well, because it's statute, they don't have to do the pre-application.
right.
So when they come in,
But if we're strongly recommending it, we're strongly recommending it.
Yeah,
right, so, but do all
So,
your,
I mean, we can.
some of your
we're
applications come in online,
available
they don't
ad
even come
hoc
to the
as well.
office.
Okay,
right?
so you would be open to special meetings in order to sort of shrink that time
Yeah, sure,
period
sure.
down?
Yeah, just like we did with the,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay,
You're
which I think we
softball.
only had one date that worked. I mean, literally.
yes.
I think
crazy.
It was only one
That was
day.
crazy, yeah.
So
We're
if-
pretty flexible because we're all
I
retired.
really feel that that will result in a much stronger application and, cause things to go much more quickly
Mhm.
with fewer problems. And
Yeah, I guess
we
it's
don't wanna
also a
look-
cost thing for the applicant, if he's got an architect. And they spend, 100 hours with the architect and they come in and it's rejected. That's a huge. From a financial
Right.
standpoint, hit. If there's any way
Yeah,
to alleviate that with the architects that are working on things with clients.
We haven't had that many
Well-
large projects that,
It became pretty obvious with this that they hadn't had an architect yet.
Right.
So when they talked to us, they had information that was helpful when they did sit down with the architect. So
Right.
they weren't spending a lot of money and they go, well, this plan's totally useless.
Yeah,
he was lucky because he had a very knowledgeable builder.
Builder,
that he
right,
was with.
right.
yeah, he
yeah.
did, that's true. Yeah, and we don't want to be looked at as a commission that denies everything, that rejects everything. I mean, we've never had to do that. We
I
would
don't
like
think we
to
have, actually,
have
not since I've been.
a positive outcome for the owner and for the district.
So if
We're
you own a
lucky.
house in the historic area and you want to change windows, are they even aware that they have to go through the committee when they
Well, the
buy the
building
house?
department takes care of that because they have to get, I mean, if they're doing it, if they're even getting it, you know, if they're
Right,
doing it
right.
right, they go to the building department and then,
For even one window, you're supposed to go through.
right,
I'm
Yeah, it's usually-
probably,
and then they're supposed to be notified by the
happening.
building.
I don't know, that's Mike, Mike's pretty good about
I-
finding.
Home ownership,
I
they're
guarantee
doing it on their
we're
own.
putting in windows without coming before the commission,
Okay,
And they're not getting permits from what I can
and they're
understand.
not getting permits.
Mhm.
so a letter out to homeowners is.
That's why, that's
But
What do
why,
we do about
yeah.
that? What do we do about that?
Well, you can actually, we have to look to see what
Legalese.
enforcement
Yeah.
there is, because I
Wonderful.
think you could probably make them change it.
Well, the building official could actually make them change it.
Oh, if they don't get a permit and they find out, a building permit, they have clear enforcement procedures. We have to check on your enforcement procedures, because it's a different
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah, they have
Would be
incredible.
happy for
powers.
them to do the enforcement.
Yeah, we,
How do we
as I
prove
read
this?
it, we have, the ability essentially to take them to court. We have like a nuclear option.
You do, it says,
But that would be helpful, you know, not to threaten people to say, listen,
It's serious.
if you don't get a permit,
It-
you might have to, and you might have been in court, and that's gonna cost you a lot more than just coming to.
it's in section 7-147H,
H,
action by the
yeah.
commission to prevent illegal acts. And then there's a
There's
Yeah,
all
might be-
different
they
things
in
there,
Did
but,
something.
and that was one of my questions, which was, what's the process for us as a commission? Should have asked it as Kevin. To recommend. Who do we recommend? Do we recommend to Kevin that he initiate legal action?
so we have to read this enforcement, but generally that happens on a staff level,
It
because when volunteers, you don't want to get involved with that. And then.
We have to go to you and say that.
No, but
You
it's
said-
in,
Have an
it's
issue
in our
here.
authorizing statute. That's why I'm questioning where's the role of the commission?
So pursuant to the provisions that, I have to read this, but,
I think we have to go to the town itself
I
probably
think the
and
commission's
say,
involved.
we think that we need to enforce.
Yeah.
Our rules on this particular,
yeah, and
Site,
you can get
and-
fined, not less than $100 and not more than $250 each day that the violation continues. So you have fining authority as well. Generally,
So I don't think this is gonna go over well, but it says shall be enforced by the zoning enforcement official or building inspector or any such other person as may be designated by ordinance.
so we all get sworn in as enforcement officials. So that's what you would,
That's
you
good.
you would have to,
That's
you would have
very
to
good.
designate, I think they would probably have to designate us through an official action as,
I think it can be the ZEO or the building inspector, or if you want somebody else, you would designate them.
Hmm.
That's how that reads to me, but it's up for
but
interpretation.
I
Yeah.
think in that letter,
Higher up, it says, the commission may, in addition to other remedies, institute an action in the Superior Court for the judicial district where such violation exists.
yeah.
So.
Kevin.
Again, it's that's like the nuclear option, right? But
So that's what happens with Mike and zoning. If someone doesn't comply, we take them to court.
okay,
And so that's what Kevin is our person who represents us in court. And so, and usually if, like if the enforcement issue gets escalated, we always bring him in because he has to represent us in court. So we want to make sure we follow
Mhm.
the procedure to the T.
So even though it says the commission might initiate the legal action, in practice, you guys would
Well-
make a.
well, we initiate
You are
it by
the town
going
of
to them.
Mansfield, so you are the town, you operate under the town of Mansfield, so any action would be town of Mansfield versus
So
the
it's-
defendant,
right.
and then it would list out in the complaint your historic district statutes and that violation that occurred.
So when I was reading through this, it was one of those things that struck me that there's no guidance for us. There's nothing in the bylaws that said if we thought such a event had taken place, somebody tore down a historic building without telling anybody. We just woke up one day, right? It was gone.
Mhm.
What are the processes we need to follow?
Well, that would be,
Do
they would have to get a demolition permit from the town. I mean,
But they didn't do what they were supposed to do. That's my
Right,
point.
but
They didn't do it.
they would be fault. I think either we would go to the town or the building department in that case, because they need a demolition permit, but no matter who needs to do it, it would be through the town attorney, which means we have to go through town staff.
So you would, like, if you see that happening, you would come to us. We're gonna look at the enforcement. I'm sure at that point, Mike Minto's gonna be involved. And then we're gonna tell our attorney that this is within the Historic District Commission. And so all of these actions, our attorney usually tells us which action is, is easier to
Mhm.
kind of go after them for. So it probably is building. But if they did something in like windows, it just depends. So that's when we would bring our attorney in.
But yeah, you might be
So-
right. If they're not getting a building permit and they've put the HVAC in the wrong place or they've changed the windows, it's possible that it would be easier and quicker to use the building department to make them change it than it would be for us. And that would be
Right.
something the attorney would know. Okay,
But
which way should
how
we
do
pursue
we,
this?
we are the ones who may be able to discern that windows have been changed without going through us or going through building or whatever. How do we make that?
Well, then we should go to the
case.
town. I mean, like, if we wanted to fight this HVAC thing, I suppose we could report to the staff that we want it taken out. And if they
Well,
didn't
we
get,
have to, it might not be that simple, but
if they didn't get a building permit as well,
so maybe,
then
And
it's
he
simple.
told them they didn't need it, so
The building official
Mike,
told them they didn't need
because
it?
somebody told him that he didn't need to have.
a certificate of appropriateness.
Yeah,
But he needed a building
the
permit.
flag was,
Right.
Okay.
the flag was run up the pole, but they got the wrong answer.
Oh, okay.
So
It's hard.
But they
to
did
blame.
get a building permit.
I don't know the specific details of that, of the property, but
I think that's something that should be in our letter. Is maybe specifically say even such things as HVAC and solar installations need to be
Right.
approved, because those might not occur to people as being part of
Yeah,
our purview.
handicap ramps.
Absolutely, I
I mean,
think,
there are things
uh,
that people might think, oh, I have to have that. It
Right.
doesn't need to be.
Where they,
Well, you'll get a bite at the apple when you see the draft letter.
Yeah.
You can add things that I've missed. Because I'm sure I'm gonna miss stuff.
I mean, I think we really need to cite the section
Yeah.
7-147D.
I may
And-
just lift that.
Yeah,
because it's
and
very
then,
clear. Well, clear as mud, but it's very clear.
yeah, it is, but, so I think for Mike, an exterior architectural feature, this is kind of vague, and so he probably didn't, what is an exterior? That's not really defined, and so,
Yeah, but it goes on to
It talks
talk
about
about,
alter. Go ahead.
heating elements or utilities. There's more definition there.
and anything that you attach to the building
Yeah.
becomes an architectural feature, whether
right,
it's decorative or not, it's still a feature at that point. It's interesting how we get used to things and then not used to them. I mean, TV aerials used to be just, you didn't even see them.
Or telephone poles.
Yeah.
With the wires on them, They're gonna become an eyesore, we sort of just pass them.
Yeah, that was my favorite thing we had done on this.
where the heating thing is, 'cause I just wanna make sure I see it.
Looking at what is acceptable and what we don't notice anymore, because they're just.
Well, no, there was one
I
instance
mean, I just
where,
read this really
Parking
quickly,
areas.
but,
They're gonna have to.
where
come to
somebody
the
had to
parking
change
area.
his service.
Yeah,
and
we
he
know.
thought he was gonna have to put it in a specific place, which was right in front of the building.
Exterior architectural features means such portion of the exterior of a structure or building as is open to view from a public street, way or
where are
place.
you, what section? Can you just,
147A.
okay.
which has the definitions.
Right.
And, so that's where you get the pretty broad
That's good.
jurisdiction.
So you'll put that in the,
And I think we ought to have some of this on the web too.
yep,
But I'm not sure that that kind of language would cover for everybody reading it. That kind of legal language would cover things like HVAC and solar. They might not make that connection.
you could do like a frequently asked questions or
Right.
give example, like
Right.
if I'm changing my HVAC, yes,
So,
windows, yes.
You almost have to anticipate
But
the
if,
problems.
if they're changing their HVAC and they're putting the condenser or the mini split in the back outside of public view, they don't need to come to you, do they?
No,
no.
No,
Right.
not if it's not
Right, that's
visible
what-
from a
Is it
public.
outside?
So that's where you just, yeah,
But it
Yeah.
was,
and we might approve it in public view, only not in certain places in public view.
right, or if it were screened by a
right.
bush,
Right.
or I don't
Yeah,
know, whatever, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, in this case, the mini split probably could have been put out of sight.
But
was
HVAC
it?
doesn't always mean a mini split, right?
No,
You can do
no.
HVAC completely
I
within the
can't write that. I
structure
looked
and
at
not
it,
see
I
any
don't
of
know.
Well,
it.
he
Right.
said it's in the definition.
I guess,
So,
Yeah, you'd need to have an
so it's in,
exterior
Have an exterior.
condenser
I know.
or something.
Altered means-
Something
but
that's
if
gonna be
you have
outside.
to repair your HVAC. If I have to repair my
I
HVAC
don't
on
know.
my house,
It's
Okay,
hard
I
for me to
know
read.
specifically, I
it
was
doesn't
specifically,
necessarily mean that I'm doing exterior architectural
Right.
features.
If you have,
Exactly.
So,
if you have one and you're putting a new one in, you mean?
no, I mean, if I have to pull a building permit to fix my HVAC. And the part that needs to be fixed is inside the
Yeah.
building. So
That's-
I'm wondering how, that's difficult for staff to determine, because they're not looking at plans.
No, the
So-
building department is, though. They have to,
The
they have to do that.
inspectors, the
Right.
inspectors.
After it's done,
Done.
Well, no, they're
No?
looking at
No.
the plans
before,
before.
okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking out loud.
this was, my youngest son is buying a house in Prospect Park South in Brooklyn, which is a historic district. The HVAC thing was, they have to get landmark commission approval for so many things, and that was one of the big ones. This is a 3-story building. I mean, and generically, the regulations are, these are all in the National Historic District, so these are all similar regulations.
One of the things I was pondering when I think about the communication and helping people understand what is or is not subject to review by this commission. Another property I have, another state, which just has a lot of restrictions. There's something called a jurisdictional inquiry form,
Mhm.
which allows the property owner to submit an informal question, like if I wanted to do X, is that within the jurisdiction of the commission?
That's a
or
good
not?
thing too, because we do that with wetlands. It's called a jurisdictional
Mhm.
ruling.
Okay.
And so they say, then the commission rules on its jurisdiction and they would present something and you would say yes or no, and then they have that in writing. And then if someone changes their mind, they say, well, I got this jurisdictional ruling and the commission said it wasn't, you know what I mean? So, but it has to be specific.
But except for the people who are just ignoring everything and just doing what they want without any kind of permit, most people are probably going to the building department first.
That's what we have talked about.
Right. So that's the place where we need the most interference initially, probably. And I don't know how you deal with the people who don't get permits in the first place.
That's just
And there's a lot of them.
there are, yep. We know. I mean, you try to educate people and through
And it's
that letter, and there's always gonna be people who.
And it's a prevailing American attitude that it's my property and I can do whatever I want and I don't care what the town or my neighbors think.
I mean, there's always gonna be people who don't follow the rules.
And their philosophy tells them
Well,
that
people say, oh,
they should,
it's gonna affect my appraisal or all kinds of rationale, right?
well, it should affect your appraisal.
That's why they don't want it. They don't want
Taxes
to
go
stick
up.
their neck up. Cause it'll cost them money.
You know, we also might consider, what do we do about properties in our districts that have glaring issues? For instance, in Mansfield Hollow, when you go down Mansfield Hollow Road before you turn right, that house at the end, a whole column is gone from the facade. Can we be of help to people like that in some way?
Things can be condemned, I suppose.
Well, no, I don't mean
Maybe,
condemning,
like,
is
Sometimes
there a
I'm
way
sure
of-
it's very expensive to maintain a historic
Yeah, it
structure,
is.
and so how do you, like if someone is,
You wanna look on the screen?
can't afford it, what do you,
Yeah,
is
Yeah.
there?
right. I mean, that's a whole different topic, grants through various,
Yeah.
you know.
And there
historic
isn't much,
agencies.
there isn't much money for that.
Well, the town of Scotland just got a huge grant from the
Their
state
town hall.
for their town hall, yeah. I
But
mean,
that's,
so
I think that's very different from
It's a
an
public-
individual
Well,
person
I know, but there
getting,
is
say, $200,000 to
there
renovate a
is
historic,
money available, but anyway.
unless they make their
um,
house a nonprofit and they don't benefit from the.
Well, the town has CDBG housing rehab funds. So if there's a property owner in a historic district that meets certain income guidelines and needs repairs to their facade, the town has funds available to help these folks.
Okay, now what did you call that? What was that? That should be in the
Called
letter
the-
too.
Development
This-
block grant, CDBG.
Would you put that,
Yeah,
if you need help,
They
because
have to,
Yeah.
no,
The-
that's a lien.
That
So,
would be a good thing to let people know that it might be available.
yes.
absolutely,
think
Yes,
very
and
much
if,
so.
and that, you know, if we could find a way to incorporate that into your mailer, that serves a dual
I think that'd be
purpose.
great,
And,
mhm.
you know, I think the department that handles, that used to come out, I used to be that person for the town. But the town made a decision to move it to human services because sometimes those people, it makes sense.
They
right?
know who
They-
needs it.
They know who needs it and they have a lot of knowledge of other services that can be provided at the same time. So,
Oh, is that what, there was,
Okay.
there's that
Excellent.
little courtyard
Yes.
area down
Yes.
by
the same.
the Eagleville Dam? Was that, there was there were renovations done there quite some time ago, but maybe that was what. they were.
that was on the line. I don't think that was part of it. But, you know, so if we wanna, you know, I'm sure that they would be very grateful to have a little advertising for
Yeah,
that program.
terrific.
Cause it's $30,000 in available funds, 35 if you have lead paint for single family homes.
Well, most of the historic district houses
It
have
has
lead
lead
paint
paint.
somewhere,
Yeah.
even if it's underneath
Yeah.
something else. Yeah, that's the craziest. I took that course, you know. And it's so insane, the whole situation. I mean, if they were to enforce that, it's impossible. You know, I don't know how many $100 billion, $1 trillion worth of property would be unrenovatable. I mean, it can't be done.
I'll take a crack
Thank you.
at
That
a
would be great.
newsletter of sorts. Do I have your emails or, because when you send, are we all BCC'd? Is that how you do it? Or,
So the agenda comes from a program, but I will,
Okay.
I will send
can you send
an
me?
email tomorrow and I'll just include everybody so that everybody has everybody's email. Does that work?
And is that okay for us to have these kinds of communications that are not part of a public meeting?
you're supposed to just communicate with us, and I mean, sometimes a member goes out and they'll say, hey, I found this article. Just remember not to reply all and start like having a conversation, but it's really best to send it to staff and say, would you please send this out to the commission?
Okay,
And like like the Affordable Housing Committee does that probably on
got it.
double daily basis.
So then
So-
we'll collect edits and suggestions
Mhm.
and we'll go from there. Got it?
Yeah.
And these
Well,
technical
and-
questions about our procedures are different from the adjudication that we do. I mean, it's a different kind of thing.
So
If we're
you-
not discussing someone's project, but discussing procedural things that interface between,
Oh, yeah, like you
that's
can,
entirely different.
right, and you can ask, you could say, I saw, like, for example, the lighting that you saw at the for the
Right.
general store, you could give that to us, not in the public hearing. But if you,
But that worked okay by just presenting it in the public hearing when they were there,
yeah,
I think. We'll
yeah,
find out.
oh, well, yeah, I think it worked well, I'm just thinking about legal procedures, you know, but I think Kevin he said that that was okay. So
Good.
I think I heard that.
I think another role we have is to keep an eye on the districts. You know, drive
Right.
around and see if you see issues or problems and just so that we're aware of what's happening.
And that would be something you could say, I think that, could you look to see if so-and-so, you know,
Building and zoning permits are public information.
yeah,
So anybody can inquire whether or not a permit has been pulled and the status of that permit. It's very simple
Mhm.
for us to.
And they're supposed to
obtain.
post that yellow card in the window so that you can see it from the street, but that doesn't happen very often. I don't know that I did it very often.
I mean, there were some really
May still have
serious
it
issues
somewhere.
in Mansfield Hollow with that house on the corner with all the cars and the complaints and whatever.
Those are hard to deal with.
So that was dealt with through zoning
Mhm.
and housing enforcement.
Right.
There's still some issues with digging and such, but
I will say,
Digging in the house at the corner,
it's not in the district.
right? That's why we dealt with it
Yeah.
through, it was a registered rental. And so it was
Mhm.
dealt with under
So
those
as the
ordinances
housing, yeah.
and under the zoning regulations for perhaps a home occupation.
They're doing a good job. I'm on the appeals board
Oh.
for that.
Mhm.
They're really doing a good
Oh.
job. Not much comes to us.
the housing code,
Yeah,
good, you could tell people that too.
How
Spread the
come you
word.
see 5 or
Yeah.
6 cars in every driveway going
Yeah,
down through the
there's a lot of
road?
grumbling.
What is that?
they're doing a lot of.
It's really
enforcement.
hard.
It's like a full-time job and they have to document it, you know, a certain number of times and within a certain time frame and make sure that, you know, the cars are all the same cars and.
So I did want to talk a little bit about enforcement, okay, so, you know, we can find all these violations, but enforcement takes a long time. A very long time, and a lot of it, you know, you can't just go in guns a-blazing unless it's like someone demolished a home without any kind of permits, right? That's when you do that, but like someone, you say it, you know, we always start out with it appears that you may have done work without a permit, then you have to document it, and then you have to work with this person, so it's years, it's not, sometimes it's if they're cooperative. But a lot of times people who are in these situations have other complications in their life that are happening. So it does take a long time, and Jolene is very, very good at it, but it takes a lot of patience.
Well, our theory with regard to enforcement has always been compliance is the goal, not fining or, anything like that. So we work towards compliance with the homeowners as much as we can.
We always say we'd rather that you fix the problem with that money instead of us collecting it.
Right.
Use that money to fix the problem.
Yeah, with the housing code, it's a little different because,
Right. If they're not, if they are showing non-compliance, that's when we will fine you. We're not afraid to fine, but we'd much rather use that money to fix the problem.
but the amount of fine it takes to
Yeah.
make up for shoving an extra 2 students in there, paying $1,500.
They get fined every day.
Just,
Or a rental trailer on your property?
well, my favorite is the landlords
Seen it all.
whose primary residence is 3 different buildings.
Yeah.
And they come and argue that.
Oh, because you have the joy of hearing that. If you can send me that from the statute, just because I want to make sure I have that, like a link to that, that would be great.
Okay.
All right. I don't know if you have any other items on your list.
We do, but you.
Election of officers.
Yeah.
Did you want to quickly elect officers, or do you think that we kind of went through the bylaws, and we
Mhm.
know we have to get some more information to you for the next meeting. The last thing is just election of officers, and then just to remind, the others are about Matt Hamill and the appointment email, and then the meeting schedule, which you already approved, but it's just a reminder of when your meetings are.
And you have that, Matt, the meeting schedule?
I do,
Okay.
and I'm gonna be gone on the 28th, I think it is, of February, next meeting. Can I zoom into it?
Yes.
I can.
Yes.
Okay.
Officers, I've been chair by default because nobody else wanted it. If somebody would like to be chair, please raise your hand and you can have it.
Are you willing?
To serve.
Well,
I think
will
you've done a
do
better
it.
job than,
I will do it if no one will, because I think it's so important, to help take care of these districts, but I have no.
I know it's a lot of work, and I know that I would be guilty of dereliction of duty, so I don't want. I like being a resource, but I wouldn't be a good
You're a
manager,
great resource, I appreciate it.
but I wouldn't be a good manager, so I don't want to do it.
But maybe,
I think
maybe
you do
that
a
after
good job.
you've had a few,
Yeah.
Cocktails?
Let me,
meetings under your belt, you'll think about it.
yeah. That'll come down the road.
So do you want to put this off, the election?
We're gonna
for
table
now,
it, think
or-
about it.
I would,
Okay.
Or you want,
You have
I would
as
just
you
move
elected.
that, I would just move that Gail be continued as our chairman,
For
So,
life.
if she's willing.
for life, oh gosh.
Yeah, you have to resign to get out of it.
So Dave nominates, okay.
You have to move on.
Okay.
now.
You're nominating. so
Yeah.
Second.
You
Sorry.
second, you're
Who's second?
seconding, Matt
Matt.
seconding, okay. And then, so now you move to a vote.
All in favor?
Yeah.
I'm not voting.
Aye.
When you're Lyndon Johnson. or-
Do you have a vice chair? Have you had one?
We've never
What
had
is it?
the other
We've never-
officers, although we had a secretary when we had more people.
Yeah,
We did.
down numbers.
Since we're down to 3 people, we haven't had, and the
got
staff
staff.
offers us. that
Right, the
role,
clerk,
so-
like, there's a secretary of planning and zoning, but we do the minutes, and we work
Mhm.
with the secretary just
Thank God.
so they review the minutes.
Mhm.
It'd probably make it even more difficult for you if you were taking notes and minutes and.
And the vice chair
Vice-
just,
measuring.
Yeah, a vice chair would be beneficial if Gail could not serve if she was traveling out of country or, if we had to continue a public hearing for, and somebody had, travel plans that they couldn't. But I think the bylaws say that anybody can step in, but you just,
I mean, at the meeting, it can be determined.
yeah, it's
She's
just
missing
cleaner
maybe.
with a public hearing, but it's up,
yeah. So the vice chair shall act for the chair in their absence and shall have the authority to perform the duties prescribed for that office. They shall be a commission member. So it might be beneficial to have a vice chair if you so choose.
I'd be willing to do that.
Oh, good.
go.
I'll nominate
Okay.
Dave Spencer to
Okay.
be our vice chair.
Second,
All in favor?
all in favor, aye.
Payback, Dave. Mess it up now.
So are we good?
Yeah, and then your next, just for your next agenda, you want to look at that letter. And so Matt can send that over to us and we'll make sure all of you get a copy of that in advance. And if you have items that you think of in the middle of the night when you can't sleep, send it to us and we'll forward it on to
Oh,
the rest of the commission and Matt.
Okay.
Um,
We'll also be looking at the website.
Yeah.
yeah, if you
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to even
Yeah.
just print off a copy of it and redline it, that would be great.
And I
Yeah.
think in the meantime, Sandy and I will work on your mailing lists, getting that worked out for you to
Yeah,
make
so
sure that we're,
Okay.
Yep.
You're ready to go.
yep, we'll be ready to go.
Yeah.
That'd be super.
And also an article, if you wanted to write like a little paragraph for the town newsletter about, you could do, it comes out 6 times a year, you could do a like a little blurb about each historic district, and then it would be really nice to highlight the general store.
You have stories that
Yeah.
people
Because
can relate
he's,
to.
you know,
Stories are
he's-
good.
He likes the support and it's a big project. what he's
Oh, yeah.
working on.
I'm amazed that anyone did that off.
It's a lot. Well, I don't want to end it. Not a lot.
Does he
Very
taking
adjourned.
photographs,
You're doing a motion for
like,
it.
before and after kind of things?
I
Yeah,
don't
Down there after
Show.
school.
But I think they've started,
Those who
because
burn-
we
Yeah,
were
they
out
have.
there today.
Oh, they were.
That would be a cool thing if someone, because he's very open, and he's been very good with us to work, like very just open and easy to work with, and he might be interested in having some, so that's something you guys could work
Okay.
on and just as an individual and then bring it to
Document
the
it.
commission, yeah, just say, yeah, you don't need to do that. as
Post a
part of
little
the
blurb about the commission
Mhm.
and tie it in so he gets a little publicity.
We can
Yeah.
ask him actually to provide a little blurb about
Yeah.
how he is approaching this, that we could put on the website.
Great.
I mean, not
That also is
through
economic
us, but
development,
actually
news, right?
directly from him.
Yeah, it's,
Hopefully.
I know.
Yeah.
The town manager wants a copy.
Meeting adjourned.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Adjourn.
Meeting, I'll move to adjourn the meeting at 7:22.
I'll second the motion.
Thanks.
We're all in favor.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Vote twice, like Chicago. Aye. All right,
Okay, well, thank you all.
thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Look forward to working with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome aboard.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Yeah.